Hello. In this video, we will create an SQL database and learn to use the select, insert, update, delete, where, and or operators, distinct, order by, and top commands on the database. If you are not familiar with database, SQL, database management systems, clean server architecture, relational database management systems, MS SQL, and SQL Management Studio, you can watch videos on the channel to learn more about the topic. Let's get started. To create a database using SQL Server Management Studio, right-click on Databases and select New Database. Give a name to your database and click OK. You will see your database added in the respective section. To create a table, right-click on the Table section, then select Table from the new submenu. You will view the field that determines the standards for the columns of your table. At this stage, we will prioritize creating the database. I want to go into detail about the option available in the data type section. We will delve into all data types and properties in detail in our next lesson. I will create my database by defining column name and data type. For the first column, I will make the designation as student ID. I am setting it as the primary key by right-clicking on it or using the Set Primary Key option in the top menu. Making it a primary key will provide advantages such as maintaining data integrity and speeding up data searches. You may not need it, but it's essential for your database's performance to define a primary key. The primary key indicates a field in a table that won't repeat. I specified that the field defined as student ID will be a numeric variable of type int. To make it an auto-incrementing number, I mark its identity as yes in the identity specification section. Later on, I am defining the fields student name, student surname, birth date, age, and gender. I am specifying their data types. I want to go into the specifics of these data types here. It's a topic in itself and you can learn about data types by watching the next video. After a brief table definition, I am saving the table name as a students. I refresh the tables area to view the newly created table. I right click on the table and select the edit option. I am viewing the area where I will add the data to the table. This is where you manually input field data. I am entering simple data for 3 rows. While adding data, I am not entering any data in the student ID field as it will be automatically filled in with sequential values. In SQL Server Management Studio, the table creation and data insertion operations we performed a while ago are converted in the SQL code and sent to MS SQL in the background. We didn't use any code at this stage, mainly because starting to create a database using code could be quite challenging for someone who is just beginning to learn. There are many manipulation commands available for data and database. Those targeting data intervene with the data itself, while those targeting the database intervene with the structure of the database. For example, to access information from the data within a database, you can use the select command. To create a new table within the database, you can use the create table command. Now we will start creating first SQL codes. You can click on the new query in SSMS to view the area where we will write SQL codes. In the new window that opens, we will write SQL queries to perform our searches before moving on to basic query operations. I need to have larger datasets, so I am adding the existing data I have to the database. I will share this data with you via the link below the video so that you can also add them and perform the same querying operation as me. With these codes, I ensure that appropriate data is added to my database. After pasting them into the query window, I click on the execute to run the query. After completing the insertion process, I can view that 186 rows of data have been added in the messages section. Once the insertion is done, I delete the code I wrote. Here the first command we will learn is the select command. When using the select command, it is used in the format select column name from table name. I execute the query select student's name from the students for our example table. This will give me only the student name data from the students table. Additionally, I can expand the scope of my query by specifying the names of the other fields as well. You may have a table with long columns. In this case, instead of writing the names of all the columns one by one, you can use the asterisk symbol to display the contents of entire table. When we learn the where command, we will be able to make more complex queries. When executing a query in SSMS, you can run the query by pressing the F5 key or by clicking on the execute button. If you haven't made any selection, all the code in the field will run. Alternatively, if you select a specific field, only the code in that selected will run when you press F5 or click execute. Make sure that the database you are working on is selected at the top in SSMS. If your database is not selected, you should specify which table you are querying from, like this. The insert command allows us to add data to a table using SQL. After the insert into command, we write the table name followed by the columns where data will be added. Then, after the values keyword, we write the corresponding values for each column. If the command is written like this, it adds a single row to the table. You can define multiple row values after the value statement. After entering the insert into students, student's name, student's surname, birth date, age, gender, value statement, I proceed to input the data for 3 rows into my students database. After executing the query, you can view the result of the query in the messages section. Alternatively, if there is an error, you can see the error related to the table name in this way. I can query across the entire table to see that my data has been added by scrolling to the bottom. Here string expression is enclosed in single quotes because it's a string expression. However, for numerical expressions, single quotes are not necessary. Numerical expressions can be entered directly. The update command is defined as follows. Update table name set column name set as new value. For example, in our students table, I am changing the birth date of the student with ID number 1 using the where condition. We will learn about the where condition shortly. Update student set birth date 2001-0101 where ID 1. After the update process is completed, I ensure that all the data is displayed again to see the changes that have been made. If I had not specified a condition with where while using the update command, the birth date of all students would have been changed to the new value. The delete command is structured as follows. Delete from table name where condition. For example, in our table, to delete the row with student ID 7, delete from students where student ID 7. If you use delete from table name without specifying any condition, it will delete all the records in the table. The delete command removes all data from the table, but the student ID for subsequent entries continues from where it left off. I am re-adding the to data entries I added earlier. Then I ensure to display all the data again. You can see that the student ID values continue from where they left off. To reset this sequence, we use the truncate table command. After executing truncate table students, the table reverts to its initial state and the ID for the next entry will start from 1 again. I am re-adding the two data entries I added earlier. Then I ensure to display all the data again. You can see that the student ID values start from 1 again. Now we will examine one of the most important commands, which is the where. First, I am going to run the SQL code from the file where I shared the deleted data to add them back. The where condition allows you to specify criteria when performing select, update, or delete operations on a database table. It filters the rows returned by a query based on the specified condition. When using the select extracts from the students command, we retrieve the entire table. By adding a where condition at the end, we can fetch specific data. For example, to retrieve data with student ID number 3, we use the query select asterisk from students where students ID set as 3. In this example, we use the equality operator when using the where clause. It is possible to use different operators as well. When I want to find students who are 20 years old in the students table, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where age equals to 20. To display students who are not 20 years old, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where age not equal to 20. To display students who are older than 20 years old, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where age greater than 20. To display students younger than 20 years old, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where age less than 20. To display student age 20 and above, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where age greater than or equal to 20. To display students who are 20 years old or younger, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where age less than or equal to 20. To display students between the ages of 20 and 30, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where age between 20 and 30. To display students whose name is Arya, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where student name like Arya. To display students whose names start with AR, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where student name like AR%. To display students whose names end with IA, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where student name like %IA. To display students whose names contain the letters RI, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where student name like %RI%. To display students named John and Arya, I should use the expression select asterisk from students where student name in John Arya. To display students whose names are not John or Arya, I should use the expression select asterisk from student where student name not in John Arya. You have demonstrated the usage of each operator with the where clause. The where clause is commonly used querying, deleting, and updating operations, and or are logical operators used in SQL to specify multiple conditions. The AND operator is used to retrieve data that satisfies both conditions. For example, the following SQL query will retrieve students who are 21 years old and gender female. Select asterisk from students where age equals to 21 and gender equals to F. This query will retrieve students who satisfy both the conditions, age equals to 21 and gender equals to F. The OR operator is used to retrieve data that satisfies at least one condition. For example, the following SQL query will retrieve students who are either 21 years old or have a gender of F. Select asterisk from students where age equals to 21 or gender equals to F. This query will retrieve students have satisfied either the condition age equals to 21, or the condition gender equals to F. In other words, it will retrieve students who are 21 years old, students who have a gender of F or both. The distinct command is used to retrieve unique values from a column in a table. It eliminates duplicate rows and returns only distinct values. With the query select gender from students, you can see that there are as many gender values as the number of students. When distinct is added before the gender expression, select distinct gender from students. Only the two different gender types will be listed since there are two distinct gender types. In such a query, it lists how many different gender types the students have. In our example database, this number is 2. Order by command in SQL is used to sort the results of a query in a specific order. It arranges the data returned by a query in either ascending or descending order based on one or more columns. To use the order by command in SQL, you write a query like this. Select asterisk from table name, order by column name, ascending or descending. Ascending and descending specify the sort order. Ascending sort the data in ascending order from smallest to largest, while descending sort the data in the descending order from largest to smallest. This part is optional, and if omitted, ascending is used by default. For example, to sort the data in the student name column alphabetically from A to Z, you would use the SQL query. Select asterisk from students, order by student name. This query would sort the data in the student name column alphabetically. When using the order by clause, if no sorting direction is specified, the default sorting order is ascending. Additionally, to sort a numeric column in descending order, you would use syntax. Select asterisk from students ordered by student name descending. This query will sort the data in the student name column from largest to smallest. Another usages sorting by column number. Select asterisk from student order by 2. This will sort the table based on the second, which is student name. You can specify multiple column numbers as well. Select asterisk from students order by 2, 4. This will sort the table first based on the second column, and then based on the fourth column. The top command is used to specify the number of the records to return from the results. For example, to display the 5 youngest students in the students table. Select type 5 asterisk from students order by age. If you want to display the youngest 10 student instant, you just need to change the number after top. Another using top is with percent. In this case, after specifying the number of the record with top, you add the percent to indicate that you wanted to retrieve a percentage of the total records. For example, if you want to display 10% of the total records, select top 10% asterisk from students order by age. This will display 10% of the total records sorted by age. So far in our training series, we have learned the basic commands in SQL. In the next video, we will learn about the data types used in SQL. Thank you for watching.